Welcome to Vermontitude, a collaborative effort between Great Eastern Radio, the Brattleboro Reformer, and BCTV to bring you the stories behind the stories on the topics you want to learn more about. Because there's always more, so there'll always be Vermontitude. Hosted by me, Peter Fish Case. Welcome to Vermontitude. New episodes drop every Tuesday and can be found by going to Vermontitude.com, Reformer.com, or BCTV. We come to you from the studios at the Innovation Box on Flat Street. I'm Peter Fish Case, and each week I cover the topics that are of concern to Windham County and the towns that reside within its borders. Today we're talking with Susan Avery, who, under the pen name Annie Augustus Rose, penned a book entitled Addicted, Our Strength Under the Influence. Welcome.
Good morning, Fish. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. All right, let me just ask the first question. Obviously, I mean, for as long as I've known you, which has been a very long time,
indeed,
you've always been Susan Avery, but yet you've penned this whole book, which is, well, kind of your story.
Yes.
And so why Annie Augustus Rose?
Well, when my grandchildren came to live with myself and my partner in the year 2000, I had the occasion to meet a school-based clinician who was working with my grandson at the time, and she asked me if I had ever heard of the Annie E. Casey Foundation. And, of course, I had not, because it had been a long time since I'd been in the kid business. Right. And so I did a little investigation, and I learned that the Annie E. Casey Foundation supported children who were in care, foster care, and kinship care, which, of course, we were at the time. I was taking care of my grandson and my granddaughter as a result of my daughter's addicted behavior.
Okay.
So Annie E. Casey was a mom who had 4 children. She lived in Pennsylvania, I think, at the time. And she had 4 boys. The oldest son was 13 or 14 years old. His dad passed away, and he dropped out of junior high school and decided that he was going to come up with a way to support his family. Eventually, this rustic way of delivering packages became UPS, and his name was James Casey, and Annie was his mom. And so we became associated with Annie E. Casey Foundation. They, after a long application period, we were accepted under their umbrella and became financially supported by them. Also had a lot of other services in addition to the fact that they help pay the bills. And at that time, I did not have to go to work, as I was in my early 50s and now had acquired a new family and was pretty busy taking care of them.
So let's get into the crux of the book, which is called Addicted. And there it is. It's available on Amazon. Locally anywhere?
Yes, at Everyone's Books.
All right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about, I guess, maybe a proper setup to know what is to probably maybe read this chapter that you wanted to read, which is a quick chapter. So
I can do that. Mm-hmm.
So while she sets that up again, this is available at Amazon. There it is again. And also at Everyone's Books. Mm-hmm.
This is Chapter 1, entitled The Dragon. The tail of the heroine dragon is uncontrollable. Visualize a gnarled, spiked weapon swiftly and viciously impaling the vulnerable and afflicted while taking down families in its path of destruction. This is the true nature of addiction, and how this powerful brain disease can turn a once beautiful, intelligent, viable child into prey. There's also the tongue of the dragon, its humanized voice. Have you heard it coming through an addicted friend or loved one? The dragon is relentless in its pursuit and seeks to convince everyone of the venomous words and promises it spews. When talking with a person with substance use disorder, you might imagine good angel, bad devil to understand the grip of this nasty, foul dragon. Picture them sitting high atop the shoulders of your friend or loved one. The good angel who imagines an experience of recovery, if only for a short moment in time, will remark, "Yes, recovery, this is the path, one I will follow to help rebuild and save my life. I just need to keep my eye on the prize." Imagine, too, the long-term devil of addiction sitting on the other shoulder, his spiky tail swishing impatiently as he waits for his next victim, ready to pounce and override any thought of recovery. In mere seconds, all hopes are dashed. Recovery might come someday, but not today. The devil wins again. Without development of a better understanding of addiction as a brain disease, nothing will change. In the broader sense, this will require far more than a generalized understanding of addiction. We need to understand stigma in the context of the attitudes of the people on the front lines, in hospital emergency rooms, in law enforcement, in the judicial system. I write with firsthand knowledge that people who suffer from addiction are characteristically treated inhumanely. Many can attest to this tragedy of the human experience. The life of the addict can be compared to a New England dirt road during any given mud season, unpredictable, a quagmire lying in wait to swallow up anyone attempting to pass. Yes, there is plenty of help emerging today, yet if the addicted person doesn't want help, how do you get them to change their thinking? Therein lies the rub, even with all the understanding a community can muster.
So I think that chapter sums up, if nothing, let's for lack of a better term, your addiction to the addicted and helping them and trying to going through this firsthand with your children. So give people a quick synopsis of kind of what happened, and you came to raise your grandchildren.
Okay. Well, I would say that in 1968, my son was born, and as a result, this memoir has been published without my children. I would never have imagined writing a book about addiction. I would say that early on in his life, he dabbled with smoking pot. My daughter, who was 2 years younger, in her teens, was also using substance. Fast forward to young adulthood, other drugs are introduced, marijuana, cocaine, and eventually both of my children became full-blown addicts. My daughter was addicted to heroin, my son to crack cocaine, and both had a fair liking for alcohol too.
Okay, and of course, as a mother, seemingly working, typical family on the narrow. I think if anything can paint the picture that nobody escapes this other than through some good graces, some path choices, some whatever. It just doesn't matter. It just can happen to anybody. And I think when we talk about the stigma of addiction, that we have to remember that this is disease. And as we discussed before we went on the air, I made the point of saying, some people will say, yeah, but that disease is a choice. So are cancers. If you choose to smoke, your chances of getting sick go up. All sorts of things. So explain how that rubber hits the road here for you.
Well, I agree that first out, addiction is a choice.
Yeah,
because you pick up a joint, you try a line, you have a drink. Some people can do that and walk away entirely, or even do it recreationally.
Sure.
It can be a part of anybody's life. But what we're talking about here are people who are actually, in some instances, addicted from the very first time.
Right.
And that is probably what happened to both of my children as they were making their way down the line into harder drugs.
Right. And I think, again, having known you for as long as I've known you, having kind of watched it unfold in somewhat real time. I mean, I don't know every grueling step, but speak to this level of being a parent, raising your children, it not working out the way you wanted to, and now having, I guess, this is a heavy statement, but having the second chance with your grandchildren, and do those stresses carry over? Is there like a PTSD around raising your grandchildren to help hopefully get them to avoid these same issues?
Well, I would go back to when I was raising my children and they were in their young teens. I had been married and divorced, and then married and divorced. And I was having to wear many hats during that time. I was a single mom trying to support my family, a roof over our heads, clothing, food, and somewhere along the way, when I look back in retrospect, of course, I think my regret is that my focus was not necessarily enough on my family, but I was trying to spread myself around so that I could too have a life, because I was 40 years old,
right,
and I still had life to live.
Sure.
So it was there were decisions that I made that I regret, but then also it is what it is. And during that period of time, I had ovarian cancer, and there were struggles that I had personally that I was trying to also deal with. So raising teenagers, having a medical issue, having to work full time, it was like juggling and trying to keep it all together.
It's a lot.
Right.
It's a lot.
So when my daughter came to me in 1998 and said, "Mom, I'm addicted to heroin," I thought, oh, my word, where did that come from? Well, I was living my life. She was a young mother with 2 children. My son lived in Virginia, and he had a child and another one on the way, and I had no idea that these things were going on. I was not, as they say today, a helicopter parent. When my children made their choices to have children, that was their thing, and I was moving along with my life, and then all of a sudden, everything about life as I knew it stopped on that September day because my daughter said, "I'm addicted to heroin." And I said, "Well, okay, so what are we going to do?" And she said, "Well, I have a bed over in Dublin, New Hampshire." I drove her to Dublin. I thought, okay, good thing. We have her in a safe place. I'm going to watch her children for a few days. She'll come home and life will resume. But it never did.
Right.
It never did.
It never did.
It never did.
So here you are now, and I don't think your story is unique in that capacity. I think it's a story that happens over and over again. And but you write the book, and the book is to help explain what you went through. There's a pretty specific timeline in it on how you stepped through. Was it a cathartic process to write this book, or was it just like, listen, here's my manual? Exactly.
Here are the facts. So when my husband and I were divorced, of course, but when we learned about, and at first we didn't even know about our son.
Right.
When we learned about my daughter's addiction, he and I got back together in the sense that we knew we had to be a unit. We had to be supportive.
Right.
However, he was hearing impaired. And so we used to communicate on AOL. And for some reason, from 1998 to 2005, I had the presence of mind to save all of the letters he and I wrote back and forth on AOL. So I had a tub full of data, real time, that started my process of thinking about writing this memoir.
Right. That was one of my questions, because I noticed it gets very specific in here with dates.
Yes. Things, those are real things that happened during that time.
And I think that those are critical points, and important things to read. Let's jump to the marketing piece of this and getting this book out here. Again, it is available on Amazon. It is available here locally in Brattleboro at Everyone's Books. Are you touring around? Are you doing a book tour, or what are you doing?
Well, right now I'm trying to keep a small circle and move out from home. And I have a wonderful group of classmates from high school. We'll be celebrating 60 years out of high school next year, but we have over 80 people on our mailing list. So the first thing that I did was to send out a class blast and told everyone about the book. And have had a great response in that respect. And of course, last Friday night, I was down on Main Street in front of Vermont Artisan Design.
I saw you there.
Yes,
right.
For Gallery Walk. And that was fantastic because the exposure is what I need to do. Now, I've contacted VPR, I've contacted Vermont Digger, I've contacted 7 Days. I even sent a copy of this book to the now president of Casey Family Services in Seattle, Washington. So I have to have a level of energy to keep pushing it out there. And of course, being here today.
Yeah.
I'm very happy that we were able to do this.
Well, you're local. Your story resonates with a lot of people. I think it's important that people understand that sometimes just having that going, okay, that sounds familiar is what it takes.
Yes.
So, Susan, I want to thank you for jumping on Vermontitude, telling your story, being brave enough to write your story. Again, it's Addicted, and it's available at everyone's books here locally. So go pick up a copy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.